The ferry stirred the smooth water as it left the dock at first light. Pale sunlight touched the cabin's white metal, and a soft breeze drifted in through open windows. Passengers found seats, whispered greetings, or leaned against the rail to watch the shoreline fade. Among them walked Tamara Blake. She carried a duffel bag over one shoulder and moved without hurry. Her dark hair was pulled back in a low knot. Her expression was calm, almost quiet, like she kept her thoughts carefully inside. Tamara stepped lightly across the deck toward a row of empty benches. She wore simple clothes, a gray t-shirt, dark cargo pants, and sturdy shoes meant for walking long distances. A few passengers gave her curious looks. Some admired the neat way she held herself. Others whispered guesses: tourist, traveler. One older lady stared politely, but then looked away, her eyes full of questions. Tamara nodded once and settled into a seat near the window, her bag at her feet. Across the deck, Derek Collins laughed too loudly. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a crew uniform that clung tightly to his arms, the clean name tag pinned to his chest read Derek. He wandered down the aisle, greeting passengers with a grin that seemed meant to impress. He stopped by the concession stand, helped a child choose a snack, then turned and spotted Tamara. His smile shifted. Derek leaned toward a fellow deckhand and whispered something. The other man chuckled quietly. Derek moved closer, kept his voice low, but his tone mocking. "Hey, stowaway," he called, loud enough for nearby passengers too. Here, Tamara glanced up. She sat very straight, her eyes steady. She slid her bag a little farther forward, but did not speak. A hush fell as people glanced at one another. Derek puffed out his chest like he enjoyed the sudden attention. "No ticket? No ID, huh?" he said, feigning surprise. His voice carried. Over the deck. She must have snuck aboard at the last second. Tamara's face showed no trace of fear.
Ow.
She simply tilted her head and met his gaze. For a moment, it felt as if the air held its breath. Then Derek laughed and pointed at her bag. "Nice bag," he said, as if mocking. "Bet you've got something to hide." Some passengers shifted in their seats. A mother hushed her toddler. A young man looked around, unsure whether to intervene. Two teenagers exchanged smirks but did nothing. The captain's voice came over the loudspeaker, calling out safety rules, but it felt distant. It's like a mystery being read from a page. Tamara reached into her bag and pulled out a book. It was a small paperback, its cover worn. She opened it and began to read, her eyes scanning the words swiftly. It was as though Derek's voice did not exist. He frowned at first, then laughed again and leaned against the rail nearby, arms crossed. He kept glancing her way, as if expecting something more interesting than a woman reading. The ferry's engine thrummed below deck. Under the floor, powerful motors turned paddle wheels or propellers that pushed the vessel forward. Outside, seagulls swooped in lazy circles. The smell of salt and seaweed drifted in on breezes that cooled the deck. Music played softly near. The snack bar, with a cheerful tune that tried to chase away any dark mood, it did little to comfort the few who felt tension rising. Derek found his friend on the deck. "She's too calm," he said. His friend shrugged. "Maybe she really is a tourist." Derek shook his head. "No tourist acts like that. She's hiding something." He motioned to two more crew members and quietly asked them to join. The small group formed a loose circle around Tamara's bench, though they still kept a few feet of space. Passengers noticed the gathering and gave curious and sometimes concerned looks. One elderly man approached the group, curious. "Everything all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. Derek turned. "Yes, sir," he said. "We're just checking on a passenger who might not have a ticket." The man looked toward Tamara and saw her reading. "She has a ticket," he said. "I saw her pay." He nodded once at Tamara. "She's fine, son." Derek's smile flickered. "We just want to make sure everyone is safe." He faced Tamara directly now. "Ticket or no ticket, you shouldn't just drift around here." Tamara lowered her book to her lap. She spoke in a quiet voice, measured and clear. "I have a valid ticket," she said. Her words were polite but firm. Derek raised his eyebrows. "Let's see it then." Tamara reached into her pocket, drew out a folded boarding pass and a small ID card. She held them up so Derek could read them without touching. The pass showed the ferry name and date.
Ow.
The ID carried her photo name and stamp of the ferry company. Derek peered at them, his mockery fading as he realized his mistake. A few passengers nodded. The elderly man who questioned them smiled and returned to his seat. Derek glanced at his friends, then shrugged and handed back the items. "My bad," he said, but his voice did not carry the apology.
Oh, yeah.
It sounded more like an excuse. Tamara folded her ticket and ID, slid them back into her pocket, and returned to her reading. She flipped the page and lowered her eyes, as if the moment had passed without notice. The other deckhands drifted away, sharing whispers and glances, meant to hide their guilt. One of them caught Tamara's eye. She offered a small nod of respect before stepping back, yet Derek was not done. He crossed the deck and tapped Tamara's shoulder from behind. She looked up. "Yeah," she said, her voice calm. "Oh, you forget something?" He looked at her bag. "Prove you're not hiding," he said. "Open it for me." His tone was no longer teasing. It carried a challenge. Tamara placed a slender finger at the corner of her book. She closed it softly, held it against her chest, and then stood. She moved with purpose, the bag resting on her shoulder like an old friend. She walked to the center of the deck where more passengers could see. A gentle hum of curiosity spread among them. Some leaned forward to see what she would do. Derek followed, still smirking. The deck creaked underfoot, and the ferry rocked as it met a small wave. Tamara stopped near the rail under open sky. The sun slid higher, painting shadows on the cabin. Walls, a few gulls dipped near the foam trailing the boat. Then Tamara faced Derek. She unzipped her bag slowly, deliberately. Passengers watched in silence. Derek expected to find smuggled goods or forbidden items. Instead, Tamara pulled out a neatly folded Marine Corps dress uniform, its ribbons bright against crisp fabric. She held it carefully, then reached inside a side pocket and removed a small photograph of herself in uniform, standing with her fellow Marines on a parade ground. Gasps rose from the crowd. Derek stiffened. He stared at the uniform like it was made of something magical. Tamara held it for a moment, her gaze steady on Derek's. She spoke softly, but the words carried across the deck. "I served," she said. "Sergeant Tamara Blake, United States Marine Corps, honorably discharged last month." Passengers exchanged astonished looks. Seagulls cried overhead as if echoing the surprise on deck. Derek's face changed color. He swallowed. Smirk vanished like mist. The deckhands around him shuffled their feet. Tamara placed the uniform back in her bag. She zipped it up and slung it over her shoulder. Then she stepped back toward her bench, opened her book again, and began reading as if nothing had happened. The faintest curve of satisfaction touched her lips. Derek backed away, his eyes lowered. He turned toward the rail and looked past the horizon. Passengers whispered. Some applauded softly. A small cheer rose from one corner of the deck. Colleagues tried to hide their embarrassment, but their eyes were bright with shame. As the ferry moved on, the tension eased. The hum of engines and the gulls' calls filled the air again. Tamara sat and read in peace. Around her, strangers looked at her with respect. She was not just another passenger. She was strong and calm. She was not a stowaway. She was a Marine, proud and unbowed. The ferry's wake shimmered behind them, marking a path through open water. It carried with it a lesson, never judged by looks alone. And sometimes the quietest person holds the greatest. Strength. The ferry's engines hummed steadily as it cut through gentle waves, carrying passengers and crew into the bright morning. Below the open deck, a narrow corridor led to the lower lounges and cabins. Tamara Blake slipped down the metal steps, her footsteps light on the cool floor. The air below was quieter, with muted conversation and the soft clink of dishes from the small cafe. She breathed in the faint scent of coffee and sea salt. It felt private here, a small world apart from Derek's teasing and the curious stares on deck. She paused at the entrance to the reading lounge, a cozy room with low benches and round windows that looked out on rolling water. A few families sat together, sharing magazines, or playing quiet games. An elderly couple nibbled pastries at a table by the window. A young woman studied a map, and two children built blocks on the carpet. Tamara crossed to an empty bench near a porthole and sat. She laid her duffel bag at her side and opened her paperback again. The words swam into her mind, letting her forget the deck's tension. For a while, she lost herself in the story. Outside the porthole, the world looked calm and endless. Light danced on the water's surface like scattered diamonds. Tamara. Read without moving, turning page after page. She felt the ferry's gentle rocking, the steady rhythm of travel. It reminded her of long voyages and service times, when she read letters from home or studied manuals between drills. In those moments, she had found peace in stories, much like now. But the peace did not last. Footsteps clicked on the metal stairs, alert and purposeful. Tamara looked up. Derek Collins appeared in the doorway, flanked by two other deckhands. His broad frame filled the entrance. The casual grin he wore on deck was gone, replaced by a hard set to his jaw. The men behind him shifted uneasily, as if following orders more than believing them. Derek crossed the lounge floor. We stopped, just in front of Tamara's bench. His eyes swept the room, taking in the families and couples who now watched him and Tamara. He lifted his voice, low but firm. "You again," he said. "Why are you down here?" His question was a challenge. Tamara closed her book and tucked it into her bag with gentle care. She met Derek's gaze without haste. "Why'd some quiet," she said softly. Her words barely rose above the hum of the ferry. Still they cut through the lounge, drawing attention. One of the deckhands stepped forward. "She doesn't belong here," he said, nodding to Derek. "She doesn't. Have a cabin ticket." Derek pointed at Tamara's bag. "See? She's hiding something. We should check." He leaned in, but Tamara held up a hand. "Can't just search my bag," she said. "That's not allowed without permission." Her voice remained calm, but a spark of steel flickered in her eyes. A mother nearby rose slowly and placed a hand on her child's shoulder. "Is this really necessary?" she asked Derek. "She's doing nothing wrong." The child peeked around, curious and concerned. The young woman with the map frowned at Derek, while the elderly couple exchanged worried looks. Derek straightened. He swallowed, his bravado wavering under polite pressure. "We're making sure everyone's safe," he said. He glanced at his co-workers for support. The two men behind him exchanged glances and shifted their weight. Neither spoke. Tamara looked around the lounge. Faces turned to her, some sympathetic, some tense. She stood. The room held its breath. She walked to the center where the porthole let in bright light. She set her bag at her feet. Then she reached inside and pulled out her boarding pass. An ID once more. She held them high for everyone to see. "This is my ticket and ID," she said. "I have a cabin assignment down the hall. I paid in full before boarding." She folded the papers and placed them on the back of the bench for all to view. Passengers moved slightly to get a better look. The mother lowered her hand from her child's shoulder and nodded to Tamara. Derek looked at the papers, then at Tamara. He cleared his throat. "Okay," he said, "but you shouldn't hide away down here." His words sounded hollow. He motioned to the deckhands to disperse. The two men backed off, disappearing into the corridor. The mother returned to her table. The young woman picked up her map again, though her eyes flicked to Tamara's bag. A few people whispered quietly, as if sharing a secret. Tamara picked up her bag and slung it over her shoulder. She walked calmly back toward the stairs, giving the lounge one last glance. The ferry creaked around them, alive with movement. When she reached the stairs, Derek stood at the base, blocking her path. He crossed his arms. "Not so fast," he said. "You're not done yet." Tamara paused at the top step, looking down at him. Her posture was straight and strong. She exhaled. Slowly, "I have a cabin key," she said. "It's on my key ring here." She produced a small key with a colored plastic fob and held it out. "See, I belong here." Derek hesitated longer this time. He reached up and took the key fob. He spun it on his finger, examining the tag. Then he shrugged and dropped it. Into his pocket. Fine, he muttered. Go on. Tamara nodded once. She stepped past him and descended to the main deck. Her steps were measured. Passengers gave her space, some offering silent nods. Derek watched her go, his shoulders slumped now. The deckhands who had followed him melted away, returning to their duties. The lounge below returned to quiet except for the low buzz of conversation about the scene. Back on the main deck, Tamara paused at the railing, looking out at the sea. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, and the wind felt stronger. She placed both hands on the cool metal rail, leaning forward slightly. Trail behind the ferry, she thought about how easily fear and prejudice had filled Derek's mind. She wondered how many times she might face similar challenges. A young couple approached her from behind. The man smiled and extended his hand to Tamara. I'm sorry that happened, he said softly. We saw what you went through downstairs, his girlfriend added. You handled it so well. Tamara turned and offered them a small, grateful smile. Thank you, she said. Her voice was gentle. It's okay now. The couple nodded and stepped back to enjoy the view. Tamara rested against the railing. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the wind lift her hair. She thought about the warmth of the reading lounge, where others had stood up for her. She felt a quiet pride and a deeper understanding of strength. It wasn't the uniform she wore in her bag or the medals she earned. It was her calm resolve, her willingness to show respect and demand it in return. The ferry moved steadily onward. A few seagulls flew overhead, their cries echoing against the wide sky. Tamara opened her eyes and looked at the horizon, the endless blue blending with the sea. She thought about her next steps. She planned to rest in her cabin, then explore the island where the ferry would dock. She would take photos, taste local food, and visit small shops, just like any traveler. But she knew she carried something more than a traveler's hopes. She carried dignity and discipline. She carried reminders that appearances could deceive, and courage could shine through silence. She had shown that day what true strength looked like: quiet, controlled, unwavering. As the ferry neared its midpoint, the captain's voice came over the loudspeaker. He thanked passengers for their patience and announced an estimated arrival time. The cruise would continue smoothly. Soft applause rose when he mentioned clear skies and calm seas. Masks of worry gave way to smiles again. Tamara turned from the railing and began walking toward the stairwell. She noticed Derek at the snack bar, offering a soda to the elderly couple he had argued with before. He nodded politely, and they accepted with cautious smiles. Tamara gave him a brief nod in acknowledgement of his attempt to make amends. He returned a stiff nod. She descended the stairs and walked through the lounge, where passengers were chatting about what to do once ashore. Some stopped her to ask about her book. Others complimented her uniform, wondering what life in the Marines had been like. Tamara answered each question with friendly honesty. She spoke of travel, of challenges faced, and of lessons learned. By the time she reached her cabin door, she felt lighter. The encounter with Derek, though tense, had taught everyone on board a lesson. She unlocked her cabin, stepped inside, and set her bag down. The room was small but bright, with a window that looked out to the sea. Tamara placed her bag on the desk, then turned to the bed and sat. She thought of her childhood growing up, learning to stand strong, to help others, to never back down from unfairness. She thought of basic training, early mornings, tough drills, and the bond of comrades. She thought of this morning's journey, how a few moments of courage and calm had shifted the currents on that ferry. She closed her eyes and whispered a thanks for another day of peace, for the chance to be herself, and for the strength to face anything ahead. Outside, the ferry sailed on, carrying stories and lessons across the water. And Tamara, with quiet pride, prepared for the adventure that lay beyond the dock. Tamara stood on the open deck, watching the waves roll by beneath the ferry's hull. She felt the wind tug at her hair and the sun warm on her face. For a moment, the world seemed calm and bright. Passengers chatted nearby or leaned against the rail, smiling at the sea. Tamara closed her eyes and breathed in the salty air, feeling a deep peace settle in her bones. Suddenly, a harsh voice cut through the quiet. Hey. Derek Collins shouted, striding toward her with long, heavy steps. His face was red, his eyes hard. Two deckhands followed close behind, their expressions stiff and uneasy. Tamara opened her eyes and turned to face him, her calm ready for whatever came next. Derek reached out and grabbed Tamara's arm. Grip was tight and sudden like a warning. "You think you can just roam free?" he barked. "No ticket in hand, no place here." Passengers nearby froze, some gasped, child behind. Tamara whimpered and clung to her mother's skirt. Tamara felt the man's strength, but did not flinch. She stood tall, her back straight, her feet planted firmly on the deck. "I have a ticket," she said softly. "I showed it already." Derek tightened his grip and pulled her closer to the railing, his voice rising. "Then prove it," he snarled, "or I'll toss you overboard." A hush fell across the deck. The ferry rocked as it met a wave, and Tamara sensed the sharp edge of danger. She looked into Derek's eyes and felt a surge of steel in her own. She did not panic. She did not cry out. Instead, she prepared herself, remembering every drill, every lesson learned in training. In one smooth motion, Tamara twisted her body. Her free hand shot down and pressed hard against Derek's wrist. He grunted as his grip loosened. She stepped back to create space, then reached out and caught his arm. With firm control, she guided his elbow into a lock. Derek yelped his pain. Shot through his joint, two deckhands lunged forward, but Tamara moved with quiet speed, pivoting on her heel and avoiding their grasp. Passengers gasped and leaned forward to watch. The young man who had earlier looked uncertain now stood up and called out, "Stop! She's a passenger," the crowd murmured, torn between fear and curiosity. Tamara kept her focus on Derek. She had no wish to hurt him, but she would not let him harm her. Derek tried to pull free, but Tamara held him in place. Then she shifted her weight and used his own momentum to steer him toward the railing. He stumbled, caught off balance by the sudden shift. The deckhands scrambled to help their friend, but they hesitated uncertain. Tamara spoke then, her voice calm but firm. "Enough," she said. "Back away now." At her words, the deckhands froze, then slowly stepped back. Derek glared at Tamara, teeth clenched, but made no move to fight back. She kept him in the hold for a moment longer, letting him feel the power of her stance. The sea breeze whipped her shirt, but she did not waver. Then she released him. Derek stumbled forward and fell against the railing, catching himself with both hands. He looked dazed, his face pale. Tamara stood tall a few paces away, her breathing steady. She did not gloat. She did not shout. She simply waited for Derek to understand that she would not be harmed. A sudden cheer rose from the passengers. A mother clapped softly. An elderly man nodded with approval. Even the children who had watched in fear seemed relieved. Derek sank to his knees by the railing, hands gripping the cool metal. He stared at the water below, as if seeing it for the first time. Tamara moved toward him, careful but unafraid. She knelt beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. Derek looked at her, confusion in his eyes. He nodded slowly, then closed his eyes, pressing a hand to his forehead as if to clear his thoughts. Passengers gathered around, creating a circle of space, but also of support. Tamara stood again and faced them. Her voice carried across the deck. "I came here to enjoy the trip," she said. "I meant no harm. Please treat each other with respect." The words were simple, but they held weight. Derek rose unsteadily to his feet and looked at Tamara. He reached into his pocket and pulled out her boarding pass and ID. His hand shook as he handed them back. I'm sorry," he stammered. His voice was small now, stripped of bravado. "I should not have done that." Tamara accepted her papers. She nodded once, a small gesture of forgiveness. "Thank you," she said. "That means a lot." She tucked the items away and turned, ready to walk back to her seat. The passengers parted around her, offering silent respect. As Tamara moved away, a hush settled on the deck. Then one by one, people resumed their positions along the rail. Watching the sea, The ferry's engine hummed its steady song. Seagulls wheeled overhead and the sun shone brightly on the water. Tamara went to her bench and sat, placing her bag at her feet. She picked up her paperback and began to read.
Around her.
The mood had changed. There was no more laughter or mocking. Instead, a gentle, quiet confidence filled the air. Passengers glanced at Tamara with appreciation, some offering faint smiles. Derek stood alone by the railing, looking out at the horizon. He seemed to reflect on what had just happened. His shoulders slumped, but his gaze steady. Tamara read for a while, the words on the page guiding her away from conflict and back into her own world. She felt calm, as if the sea itself had washed away the moment's tension. When she closed the book again, she looked around and noticed how the ferry's voyage continued peacefully. Children laughed at distant games, couples spoke in low tones, and crew members went about their duties without incident. The deck grew warm as the sun climbed higher. Tamara rose and stretched, feeling the lightness in her limbs. She walked to the railing again and looked out over the endless blue. She thought about how quickly fear and misunderstanding can rise between people. She thought about courage not showing off but standing firm in what is right. A young boy tugged at his father's sleeve and pointed at her. The father smiled and nodded toward Tamara. She waved briefly. The boy returned the wave with a shy grin. Tamara's heart felt full. She had shown strength when needed and compassion afterward. As the ferry neared its turn toward the dock, the captain's voice came over the speaker, thanked everyone for their cooperation, and announced the approach to the next port. Passengers gathered their things, ready to disembark soon. Tamara walked toward the cabin stairs, passing Derek on the way. He met her eyes, nodded, and said softly, "Thank you." Tamara smiled and nodded back. She descended into the cabin, area her steps, sure and graceful. The ferry carried on across the water, its wake carving a path behind. And Tamara, with quiet pride, prepared for the next part of her journey, knowing that respect and self-control could guide her through any storm. The ferry cut through the bright morning sea, its engines humming a steady song. Passengers moved about the deck, some chatting in small groups, others gazing out at the sparkling water. Tamara Blake stood near the rail, watching white waves break against the hull. She felt the afterglow of the morning's events, a calm confidence that carried her through each moment. In her mind, she replayed the confrontation, not with anger, but with a sense of purpose achieved. A soft voice called her name. She turned, to see Captain Reynolds approaching, his uniform crisp and neat. He offered a gentle smile. "Sergeant Blake," he said, using the title she had revealed earlier. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Tamara nodded and followed him toward a quieter corner of the deck, where the sea breeze felt cooler. The captain's presence was steady, like the ship itself, strong, reliable, and respectful. They stood beside a lifeboat cradle, shaded by the ferry's upper deck. Captain Reynolds spoke quietly but clearly. I heard about the incident with the deckhand. You handled yourself with honor. You showed control and compassion. That is what we want on this ship." Tamara felt warmth in her chest. She lifted, her chin slightly. "Thank you, sir. I only did what any person should do when treated unfairly and threatened." The captain nodded. He looked out at the horizon for a moment, then turned back. "I'd like to offer you a little token of our appreciation." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metal pin shaped like an anchor. "This is our ferry's badge of welcome. It means you are always welcome here, no matter where you go. Please wear it when you travel with us." Tamara accepted the pin with gratitude, clasping it to her shirt. She felt honored. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Thank you for reminding us all what respect looks like. Carry yourself with dignity." Tamara smiled. "It was nothing, Captain. Just standing up for what's right." He nodded once more and turned to walk away. Tamara watched him go, feeling the pride of someone who had truly earned respect. Meanwhile, on the other side of the deck, Derek Collins sat alone on a bench. His shoulders slumped, and he held his head in his hands. Crew members passed by, giving him quiet nods. One young deckhand approached, carrying a water bottle. He offered it to Derek. "Here," he said softly. "Drink." Derek took the bottle without looking up, his face etched with regret. He drank slowly, lost in thought. Tamara finished fastening the captain's pin and walked toward Derek. She saw his head lift, his eyes meeting hers. She took a deep breath and sat beside him. He stiffened, unsure what to expect. She offered him the pin she held, the anchor. "Badge on the deck's wood, if you like," she said. "You can pin it here too." His eyes widened. He shook his head at first, then gently took it, pressing it onto his shirt pocket. His hand trembled. Derek looked at the badge and back at Tamara. He swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice quiet and raw. I was wrong to treat you like that. I let my pride and fear take over. I'm truly sorry." Tamara nodded, placing her hand over his. "I understand. Prejudice and fear can cloud our actions. What matters is we learn and move forward." A soft breeze ruffled their hair, carrying the smell of salt and promise. Passengers nearby watched them with gentle smiles. A mother holding her child leaned forward and whispered, "Thank you both." The child waved shyly at Tamara, who waved back. Derek glanced at the child and managed a small smile. It was the first real relief he had felt since the morning. Tamara stood, offering him the chance to stand too. He rose slowly, looking steadier. They walked together toward the snack stand, where a small celebration had begun. A table was set with fresh fruit, pastries, and bottles of water. Crew members had arranged simple treats to honor Tamara's courage and Derek's apology. The ferry's first mate made a short announcement. "To Sergeant Blake, thank you for your bravery and kindness." Passengers clapped softly, some cheering. Tamara blushed, but she accepted the applause with a humble nod. Derek stepped forward and raised his water bottle. "To new understanding," he said, "and to respect." People toasted with bottles and cups, their faces warm. Tamara raised her bottle in response, and the crowd quieted. The moment felt gentle and sincere, like sun rays breaking through clouds. She took a sip and felt the cool water mingle with her calm pride. After the small gathering, Tamara wandered back to her seat by the rail. She watched families chatting, friends laughing, and crew members returning to their duties. The ferry felt alive with goodwill, as if the morning's tension had been washed away by honesty and grace. She thought of how quickly fear could rise, and how courage and understanding could heal it. The ferry's route curved and brought it closer to the next island. The water lightened to turquoise, and distant shorelines emerged, dotted with palm trees and white sand. Tamara felt a thrill of excitement. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small map she had tucked away earlier. She unfolded it and traced the path to the island's beach, spotting tiny icons marking lookout points and cafes. A young couple sitting nearby noticed her map. The woman leaned over. "Are you headed to Coral Beach?" she asked. Tamara nodded. "Yes, I've heard the sand there is bright and the water clear." The woman smiled. "It is. If you like, join us. We're planning to snorkel. It's a short walk from the dock." Tamara looked around and saw Derek standing a few feet away, offering directions to another passenger. She felt comfortable inviting him too. She slipped the map into her pocket and replied, "Thank you. I'd love to join you." The couple extended their hands. Tamara shook them warmly. Their friendly eyes made her feel welcome more than any uniform or badge could. She realized that kindness and openness could bridge gaps better than stern lessons. The ferry slowed as it approached the dock. Crew members began lowering ramps and preparing gangways. Passengers gathered belongings and moved toward the exits. The air buzzed with anticipation. Tamara gathered her bag and pinned the anchor badge to her shirt again, feeling its weight a small symbol of respect earned. Before stepping off, she turned to look at the ferry one last time. She thought of the morning's events, the mocking words, the danger of prejudice, and the power of calm resolve. She thought of Captain Reynolds's kindness, Derek's apology, and the passenger's support. She felt gratitude for each step, each lesson learned. When the gangway touched shore, Tamara stepped off the ferry onto solid ground. She heard the waves lap gently against the dock, saw seagulls weaving between poles, and smelled the sweet scent of island flowers. She breathed in the moment. New land, new friends, new adventures. Knew this day would stay with her, a reminder that respect, courage, and kindness could guide her through any sea. With a gentle smile, Tamara walked toward the island's path, ready for the next chapter. The ferry behind her swung its bow into the open water, heading back to pick up more stories. More people, more chances to learn and grow. And Tamara, marine and traveler, carried her quiet strength onto the island's bright sands. The sun shone warmly on Tamara's face as she stepped off the gangway onto the island's wooden dock. Her boots clicked on the planks, and she felt a light thrill of freedom. All around her, palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze, and waves lapped softly against the shore. Few early visitors walked past, carrying snorkeling gear or cameras. The air smelled of salt, flowers, and sunscreen. Tamara took a deep breath, savoring the moment. She felt calm but excited, ready to explore. She slung her bag over her shoulder and followed the young couple she had met on the ferry. The man led the way, guiding them along a narrow path lined with bright bougainvillea and rustling ferns. The woman pointed out colorful birds flitting in the trees. "That's a parrot," she said softly. "I come here every morning." Tamara smiled and lifted her binoculars from her bag's side pocket. She scanned the branches until she spotted a flash of green and red. The parrot sat on a low limb, preening its feathers. Tamara clicked her tongue gently, and the bird cocked its head, as if curious about her. The path opened onto a small beach bay. White sand stretched before them, curving around clear turquoise water. Bright shades of blue and yellow. The couple stopped and looked at Tamara. "This is the spot," the woman said. "Let's set up here." They laid towels on the sand and unpacked snorkeling masks, fins, and a small cooler of fruit and drinks. Tamara found a spot beside them and placed her bag on the towel. She unzipped it and carefully set aside her paperback before pulling out her camera. She loved to capture moments, the light on waves, the curve of the beach, the smiling faces of new friends. After a moment, she donned the snorkeling mask. The couple joined her in the shallows. The water was warm and inviting. Tamara waded in until it reached her waist, then slipped her feet into fins. She took a deep breath and dipped her face below the surface. Colors erupted around her. Schools of tiny fish darted among slender coral branches, their scales flashing. Silver, a large sea turtle, glided by, its movements slow and graceful. Tamara followed at a respectful distance, awestruck. She raised her camera and gently pressed the shutter, careful not to disturb the creature. She stayed in the water for nearly an hour, exploring reefs and hidden coves. Each dive revealed new wonders: a hidden sea cucumber clinging to rock, a shy octopus tucking into a crevice, bright sea stars drifting on the current. When she finally surfaced, she felt light and peaceful, as if the ocean had washed away any lingering tension from her ferry journey. She climbed onto a rock to rest, letting the sun dry her face and hair. The couple joined her, laughing softly as they shared stories. They offered her fresh pineapple slices and cold water from the cooler. Tamara bit into the sweet fruit, its juice dribbling down her chin.
Ow!
They all laughed as she wiped her mouth with a towel. The simple pleasure of friendship and sunshine filled her heart. She felt grateful for the calm morning that had become tense, grateful for the lessons learned, and grateful now for the chance to connect with kind strangers in this beautiful place. After the snack, Tamara helped the couple pack up. They walked back along the path toward the town center, where small shops and cafes dotted the main street. The air buzzed with the sound of music from an outdoor cafe. Local musicians strummed guitars and sang gentle melodies. Tamara paused at a stall selling handmade bracelets. She ran her fingers over strings of beads in shades of blue and green. The vendor smiled and offered a bracelet made of polished shell and wood. "For you," he said, "a gift of the island." Tamara accepted it with a nod, fastening it around her wrist. It fit snugly, a reminder of this day. She wandered further, peering into a small shop filled with wooden carvings and colorful paintings. A painting of the sea turtle she had just seen caught her eye. The artist, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, explained that she painted scenes from nature to honor the island's beauty. Tamara listened as the artist spoke of protecting the reefs and caring for the ocean. Tamara nodded thoughtfully. She admired the passion in the artist's voice. She purchased a small painting, a watercolor of the turtle gliding past Coraland, tucked it safely into her bag. Next, she found a cafe offering fresh fish tacos and tropical juices. The couple joined her at a shaded table under a thatched umbrella. They each ordered different flavors of juice: mango, guava, and passion fruit. Tamara savored each sip, the bright sweetness mingling with a hint of tartness. The tacos arrived, filled with grilled fish, shredded cabbage, and a creamy lime sauce. Each bite was fresh and crisp. They chatted about their homes. Tamara spoke of the homeland she loved, of her days in service, and of her travels since leaving the Marines. The couple shared stories of their work teaching and photography, and of their hopes to return to this island someday. After lunch, Tamara took a slow stroll along the shoreline, barefoot in the sand. She let the water wash over her feet, cool and soft. She watched a group of schoolchildren running along the beach, their laughter bright in the sunlight. Nearby, a fisherman pulled in a small net, sorting colorful shrimp and tiny fish into his basket. He waved to her, and she greeted him with a friendly nod. She thought about the strength it took to fish these waters, to face the sea's moods. Every day, she felt a kinship with people who lived close to nature, who relied on its gifts and respected its power. As the afternoon wore on, Tamara knew she would need to head back to board the ferry home. She felt a pang of regret, but also warmth, carrying the day's memories in her heart. She retraced her steps to the dock, her bag full of souvenirs, a bracelet, a painting, a camera full of photos. She paused at the cafe one last time and bought a small bag of roasted nuts to snack on later. She watched the sun dip lower in the sky, the light softening to gold. When she stepped onto the ferry again, she found a spot near the railing and settled in. The boat's engines hummed as it left the island behind. Tamara held her painting gently, looking at the soft watercolor scene. She thought of the turtle and the careful way she had photographed it. She thought of the parrot that had watched her from the trees. She thought of Captain Reynolds's kindness, Derek's apology, and the respect she had earned from strangers. Each memory glowed like a small treasure inside her. Gentle breeze carried the scent of the sea across the deck. Tamara placed her painting in her lap and leaned against the rail, closing her eyes. She felt the ferry rock beneath her feet, a steady reminder of life's journey, its calm moments, and its storms. She opened her eyes and watched the sky change colors, the afternoon light turning pink and orange. She breathed deeply, feeling peace and pride. Behind her, crew members served hot coffee and tea to passengers. Some families gathered for sunset photos. A father helped his young daughter stand at the rail, pointing out a distant bird gliding across the water. Tamara smiled at their joy. She thought of how one person's quiet strength could inspire others, how respect and kindness could change the tone of a whole journey. When the ferry neared the home dock, the lights along the pier glowed softly in the dusk. Tamara stood and gathered her belongings. She slung her bag over her shoulder and tucked the painting carefully inside. The couple from the island cafe found her at the railing. They exchanged hugs and promises to keep in touch. Tamara gave them her email and waved as they disembarked together. Her farewell felt warm, like a promise of future friendship. As Tamara stepped onto solid ground, she looked back at the ferry's lights twinkling on the water. She smiled at the memory of the day, the danger faced, the lessons learned, the island's wonders, and the new friends made. She felt a quiet strength inside her, a calm confidence that would guide her through any journey ahead. She lifted her head and walked toward the exit, her heart full of gratitude and hope, ready for whatever came next.